Hi, everyone. My name is Mimi Spurl. I'm the Assistant Director for Civic Engagement, and we are going to give people like 30 more seconds to jump on, and then we can go ahead and get started. While we are waiting, I just want to bring your attention to, you should see a Q&A feature on your screen. Feel free to use that at any point throughout the presentation to drop questions. My co-lead Devin is here behind the scenes. He'll be jumping on shortly, and he and I will try to answer a couple as we go, and the rest we will make sure we try to answer at the end. So feel free to use that feature throughout. And looks like the attendee numbers staying pretty stable, so maybe we'll get started. So hello again, my name's Mimi. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Assistant Director for Civic Engagement. Joining me in just 1 second is Devin Farkas, he, him pronouns, Assistant Director for Outdoor Programs. We both work in the Office of Student Life, and we are the Assistant Directors that will bring you Trek. Also not with us tonight, but play a huge role in the Trek program are our logistics coordinators, who are very cool. You'll meet them throughout your trips. Those are Raylan, Jonah, and Brandon, as well as Megan Minen, who works with us in student life. I think that we can go on ahead, Patty. Cool. So tonight we wanted to set aside some time to run through different Trek logistics and answer any questions that you might have. We'll go through the new timeline for arrival, check-in, and orientation. We'll talk a little bit about packing lists, answer questions around food, some final reminders around dates and forms we need you to fill out, and then again, like I said, leave some time at the end for questions and answers. Again, if anyone has joined us since we started, on your screen there should be a Q&A feature. Feel free to drop questions in as we go, and Devin and I will answer them towards the end of the presentation. Next slide. And I'm going to toss it over to Devin too. There.
Hi, thanks, Mimi. My name is Devin Farkas, he, him pronouns, Assistant Director for Outdoor Programs. Going to share just a reminder about the big picture of Trek. So reminder that we get started on Friday, August 19th, and we wrap up on Wednesday, August 24th, which is the first move-in day for first-year students. So a reminder that everyone coming on Trek gets to move in early. So you'll have access to your rooms on Friday, August 19th to move in, and again when you come back Wednesday, August 24th. Even though you are split up into move-in days, Wednesday and Thursday, every one of you in Trek will be able to get into your rooms on Wednesday, August 24th. What's going to happen in between those two dates? So you arrive on Friday the 19th, and then we head out onto our trips. 6 days of camping. Our groups are mixed gendered. You're sleeping in tents, lean-tos, or under a tarp with your peers, preparing and eating meals together, working together as a team to reach your group goal, and being outside regardless of the weather, barring a hurricane, of course, which those happen. I want to, just so that now we have a big picture idea, a reminder of what we're going to be doing. Mimi's going to take our next slide to talk about the new arrival process.
Awesome. So a couple things have changed this year. And so if we've got parents or families who have escorted a student through the Trek process before, pay attention, things are a little bit different this year. Because Trek starts on a Friday. So we're going to kick off the morning with moving into residence halls. So starting as early as 8:30 in the morning, you can come to campus and check into your assigned residence hall. You will get your key at your res hall and be able to move your things in. Please, please, please note that students must be present and in the building anytime there's things going in and out of their room. So, when you come check in, your student will get the key, and when your student leaves the building, they need to return the key to the folks in their residence hall. More information on where to park and whatnot can be found on our website, which is uvm.edu/trek. You can find our FAQ page that walks through more of these changes in detail. Starting at 1 o'clock, we'll proceed with Trek check-in. So families will head off to an info session and reception while students check in and go through their gear check. We'll get into the packing list a little bit later tonight, but the packing lists are very, very important to make sure that the gear check and check-in process go very smoothly. So basically, we'll have a backpack explosion. You'll get to, go through all your things with your trip leader. And if there's anything that isn't quite right for the trip or doesn't quite meet the specifications of what we intended based on the packing list, we'll have a conversation with the students about making sure that you all have the right gear to go out safely and have fun on your trip. Families will have a final moment to say goodbye to each other right around 3 o'clock or 3:30 rather, and then we will go into the rest of our trek kickoff. You'll get to meet your groups. We'll have a little dinner on campus, and then we'll do our first night camping together as a group. Again, I can put this in the chat or FAQ, I think, but just a reminder that if you have any questions about things like parking, those details will come out again in an email closer to move-in day, and as well can be found on our website, www.uvm.edu/trek. Over to Devin.
All right, so that was Arrival Day, and just to reiterate what Mimi already said, it is different this year than it has been in the past. So if your sibling has done Trek, or if you're talking to family members of folks who have done Trek in the past, you may have heard that you only have a very short period of time to move in. That is different this year. This year is starting with move in at your res hall, and then after you get lunch with your families, that's when we do check in at the Davis Center for Trek. I just want to make sure, because there have been many years of one way, and now we're flipping the script a little bit. So when the trips end, we have a very brief amount of time to get you all back to campus and ready for the start of orientation for the groups that are slotted for move-in on Wednesday. The first thing for that group is at 3 p.m. And so we're going to get everyone to come back starting around 11 a.m. on Wednesday, August 24th. We're going to have grab-and-go lunch available, and then off to your room, which you'll be able to get into and sleep in that night. Those that have orientation starting on Wednesday will start at 3 p.m. Everyone else is welcome to join those events, but it isn't required to until the following day when their group is getting kicked off on Thursday. So again, regardless of the move-in day that you have been assigned for orientation, you will have access to your room that night. You'll be able to stay in your room on the 24th. I want to point out for the family members that are joining us tonight that there is very, very little time here for you to interface with the students that are arriving back. So that window between 11 to 1, there's a lot of things happening. You should not plan to rendezvous at 11 a.m. Different groups are arriving back at different times. We just have the first groups arriving back earlier, and then grab-and-go lunch available at 1. So just for your time management mindset, there is not that block of time from 11 to 1 is not free space, free time. It's going to be a very frenetic period until 3 p.m. when one group is getting started with orientation and the other group has a time off. All right, so we've talked about the bookends of our trip. Mimi is going to take the next slide to get us talking about what to bring, our packing lists.
Let's talk about packing. So we'll go through some of the finer points of packing for the trip, but we're not going to go into the nitty-gritty details for each trip. Again, if you head over to that link that shows up in the chat, you'll be able to see the full list of packing instructions for each trip. In general, Trek provides all group gear. So things like tents, stoves, tarps, canoes, anything that you're going to use as a group. We also provide all technical personal equipment. So if you're going on a canoeing trip, we'll give you a life jacket. Harnesses, dry bags, what have you, all included with your trip. What we cannot provide, unless you go through the gear request form, are things like personal clothing or equipment. So the packing list includes all of the personal clothing and equipment you'll need, like sleeping bags, sleeping pads, toiletries, etc. You should have received an email that has the gear request form in it. If there's something that you don't own or you don't feel like you have a ton of use for outside of this trip, go ahead and fill out that gear request form, and we can try to get you outfitted with things that you need. Over to Devin.
All right, so if you have misplaced that email that Mimi is referencing, describing where you can find your packing list, you can also go to our homepage, navigate to the Preparing for Trek page, where you can find all of the packing lists detailed out per trip type. So it's important that you identify the packing list for your trip, the specific trip that you're going on. You want to make sure that you're bringing, if you're going in a sea kayak, you want to make sure that you have what you need for sea kayak versus for a backpacking trip. Generally, the general components are the same, but there are some specific pieces that are unique to each trip type. One change that we need to make sure folks are aware of: if you are on the Pride service trip, the packing list has changed based on where the campsite is located. We've been working with our community partners to make sure that the trip feels good for everybody. And so you'll notice, if you already checked the packing list, it was for a based camp style trip. We are still going to be base camping on the Pride service trip. However, it's going to be in more of a backcountry setting. And so the packing list has changed to reflect that. So please, if you're on a Pride service trip, go check your packing list again. All right, Mimi is going to break things down a little bit more on our next slide.
Okay, so when you open up the packing lists, you'll see a list that starts to look kind of like this, and it's going to have a ton of different items that you need on it. What does this all mean? It does not mean that you need to go out and buy the newest name brand version of the things on the list. If it says 2 1-liter water bottles, it doesn't mean you need a new Nalgene. You can use a recycled Gatorade bottle if you so choose. So you just need something that's going to tick the boxes that are outlined on the packing list and that feel good and comfortable to you, for things like backpacking. If you're doing a ton of hiking or traversing, making sure that you're not using like brand new hiking boots and things that have been worn in for you. A note that water bottles cannot be glass. Just making sure that that's noted. And then the final piece of non-cotton clothing. So if you look at our website, there will be a note anytime that we require something be non-cotton. A lot of the cotton items are listed as optional. So like a more casual cotton t-shirt, like the one that I'm wearing for around camp when you're done at the end of the night. We do ask that you stay true to the designation of cotton or non-cotton, for the reason outlined on the screen here, is that cotton is comfortable, but it absorbs a lot of water. And so while cotton might be more comfortable in the moment, we want to make sure you're comfortable for the duration of your trip, and you're probably not going to be comfortable if you're soggy. So we do ask that you follow those instructions carefully. Again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us at the Trek email, which we'll have at the end of the slide. We're happy to help kind of walk through what gear, answer gear questions. If you have something existing and you want to know if it works, we're happy to do that for you. Over to Devin.
All right. So we want to make sure to give everyone enough time to prepare for something that is explicitly not on the packing list. So Trek we have a no cell phone community standard. There's a little asterisk here because this is not a rule. We're not going to confiscate your phones. The reason that we host Trek is that you have time to get to know a small group of your peers really well before school starts. If you're on your phone, you're engaging with everything out there and not right here. So the first community standard that we ask you to agree to is to be here now. Once you're back on campus, you can be anywhere and everywhere, but for these 6 days, we are purposeful about creating a small community with your Trek group. We want you to lean into getting to know your trip mates and disconnect from the ability to escape your immediate surroundings. So we don't confiscate your phones, but we really need you to agree to that community standard. More likely than not, if you do bring your phone, you won't have any service, so it's not going to do you any good. The batteries are going to die. And then when you're out for 6 days, we can't guarantee the weather. You're more likely to lose, break, or get water damage than anything else. So this is a firm ask. We want you to commit to our community norm of be here now. The reason that we're saying this now and not on arrival day is because we know that a lot of folks use their phone as a coping mechanism for stress, and the transition to college is stressful. When you're out on your Trek trip, regardless of whether we say no cell phones or yes cell phones, you're not going to have service. Your phone is probably going to die, and so you won't have that same coping mechanism that you're used to. So now is a good time to start to think through, problem solve, test drive some other ways to navigate those stressful times. We know this firsthand. We all glued to our phones. This is not us being old and curmudgeon-y and saying phones are the downfall of society. This is all about you spending time in a small group of your peers getting to know one another. So we're asking that from Trek kickoff at 3:30 p.m. on August 19th. We expect you to turn your phone off, power it down, put it away. Last year, we had folks decided to just leave it in the res halls. Other folks decided to put it in a safe bag that we then kept under lock and key in our offices. We can strategize in more detail with you on how you wanted to manage that. But we ask that from that point, 3:30 p.m. on August 19th, phones are off. It's important to note that our trip leaders will all have a phone as well as a satellite communication device. So you're not out there with no way to contact anyone. Every trip has a rugged, waterproof satellite communication device. So regardless of cell reception, they will always have a way to reach out to us and for us to get in contact with them. So cell phones, there we go. Turn it over to Mimi for the next slide.
What's for dinner? Okay, so a note on food. You can see on the screen, oh, it did get a little bit cut off, but you can see on the screen some examples of foods that have often made up the Trek menu. We provide all of the food for while you are camping. And we do want to take time to note, especially that food is stored family style. So what we mean by that is that when trips go out, most of the food is stored in this all-in-one like airtight container that helps prevent animals from getting into the food. If you are someone that has a dietary restriction or a religious or cultural preference, we do ask that you communicate that to us on your med forms. We also ask if you can let us know if it's okay for your food to be stored. Say if you're allergic to nuts, can it be stored in the same container as other food that contains nuts? And if not, does your entire trip need to be nut-free? We want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable eating. The trips that we run are a lot of fun, but it's a lot to put your body through, and as any camping trip would be. And so we want to make sure that everyone's getting the right fuel to kind of keep them going. Again, any questions about food or dietary restrictions or anything else can be dropped in the Q&A, and Devin and I will field those as we go. Over to Devin.
Okay, so now that we've taken a zoomed out view of what Trek is and a more zoomed in view, we just want to take another moment to make sure that you know that we can make accommodations if you need them. So please, 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 if when you were filling out your registration form, you thought, nah, I'm good. And then after learning more, you're like, oh, actually, there's something that I do need you to know about, and ask that you do accommodate XYZ. We can make accommodations for dietary restrictions, as Mimi said, both knowing whether it's something that you can or cannot consume, but also if it's something that you can't even be in contact with, or something that there can't be any cross-contamination. So we want to know those things. We need to know those things. Likewise, medical needs, limited physical mobility, religious and cultural accommodations. If anything has changed for you from when you registered to now, please, please, please let us know. All right, we'll turn the next slide over to Mimi.
Again, so just a couple reminders. If, again, as Devin was saying, let us know about any accommodations you need. We're happy to work with you, but we can only know what you share with us. We'll share some contact info at the end of the slide, and if you prefer to message either myself or Devin directly, you'll have the option to do that rather than to send a message to the full Trek team. A reminder that the gear request or equipment request form, which you can find on the website and in your email, is due July 24th. We do ask that you complete that by July 24th so we can make sure that we're getting everyone what they need. And please, please, please pay attention to your UVM emails. We know that we've said this many times, but the Trek communications are going to go to your UVM emails. That's the expectation that the university has set, that you're checking that email. So please pay attention to that particular account as we get closer to Trek and are sending out a few more announcements. And I'll toss it over to Devin to close us out.
All right, so again, if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. And know that we receive a lot of similar questions and have compiled them into our FAQ. So before reaching out, take a look, see if there's an answer that helps with your question. And if not, you can reach out to the Trek email. If there's something that you want to ask or communicate to us that you don't want going to our general email, we've also included my personal email and Mimi's personal email, our work emails. So that you can reach out if you want just one person responding to your question and not the whole Trek team. Okay, so at this point, we're going to start addressing the questions that have come into the chat. The first question that I'm seeing is a question about a specific question about ankle high boots versus non-ankle high boots. And what I'll say is we want to make sure that you're following our packing list to the T. There's a lot of things that we do on personal trips that don't translate well to a group trip. So this is a very specific environment, not just being on the long trail, but being on the long trail with a group of other people that you've never met before, led by 2 trip leaders as a part of the UVM outdoor programs and civic engagement. It's a very specific environment. And so while you may be used to hiking with boots that are not ankle high, we may be asking you to carry more equipment than you normally carry. We may be hiking on trails that are different than what you're accustomed to. So while everyone may have personal preferences, we want you to follow our packing list to a T. The only exception to that is certain things like hiking boots. They need to be worn in before you go. So if you're finding yourself in this, in response to this, to my response to this question, saying, yeah, but just reach out and we can chat on the phone. We have a question about gluten-free, protected from cross-contamination, which Mimi has answered in the chat. Can we bring our own snacks like jerky? You are free and welcome to bring your own snacks. on the first day when you're meeting with your trip leaders, we'll go through a full gear and food check to make sure that we have everything that we need and nothing that we don't. So if you want to bring your own snacks, please feel free to do so. However, know that we are accounting for enough food for everyone. We always bring sticks of pepperoni. If you know that you like to eat a lot of meat on the trail and you want jerky, bring it along. Question, if you already indicated an allergy at registration, do I need to send an additional email? So for that, we'll say if you feel like you accurately indicated the severity of your allergy, you're all good. The questions that we ask in the med form are you allergic? How allergic? What happened the last time you came in contact with that allergen? And what was the outcome? So as long as you provided all of that information to us, we're good. Can we bring deodorant? I was told it can attract bears. So two things to this. One, I would discourage bringing anything like deodorant or makeup. When you are unable to regularly shower or clean, those kinds of products can cake on and lead to other skin issues. Obviously, personal preference. I would encourage not. The other thing is, as a community norm, we're all going out, we're all getting stinky, and no one's going to be judged if you're stinky. So my recommendation is to leave it at home. It's one more thing to carry. If it cakes on and you can't wash it off, it can lead to a rash, which is a worse problem to deal with. As far as attracting bears, when we're camping in bear territory, we do want to take anything that we can that smells, that has a strong scent, and put it into the bear kegs. But it's not going to draw bears to your camp group. So you don't have to worry about deodorant being like bear bait. But it is something like all of the food that we're bringing that we'll put into our bear-proof canisters and store away from our campsite. They will be much more attracted to the pepperoni than to deodorant. All right, next question. My Trek email says I've been selected for the Catamount Trail and Conservation Trek. Are the trips separate or combined this year? How do I know which one I'm officially on? So that is a good question. I'm going to let me answer that one.
I can jump into that one. You are on Catamount Trail. Sorry for the confusion. If you go look at the website now, it should all be updated so that Catamount Trail is labeled Catamount Trail and Conservation. So sorry for that confusion.
All right, the next question I see is where exactly are we hiking? So all of our trips go to different locations. Most of our trips are all along the Long Trail, starting as far south as Killington and as far north as the Canadian border. We have one trip that it was actually going to be able to touch the Canadian border. It's very exciting. And then we have 3 backpacking trips in the Adirondacks. So all of our trips are in the Northeast, either in Vermont or in the Adirondack High Peaks region. We would definitely recommend extra batteries for cameras, just like with your headlamp. Any electronics, bring an extra battery, always a good idea. For the backpacking trek trips, we ask for the level of difficulty, the spiciness level that you would prefer, and we made sure to sort you into a group onto a trip that matches that spiciness level. There isn't an unending number of route variations we can do, so we take into account the spiciness level that you requested and made sure that you're on a trip that matches that as closely as possible. A follow-up to the question about deodorant. If you're on a base camping trip that does have showers, is it okay to bring things like deodorant and shampoo? Of course. And again, I'll just reiterate the issue with deodorant and other products is that if you don't have the opportunity to wash it off, it can cake on, get really uncomfortable. You can get rashes, and it's more trouble than it's worth. So there we go. So a question about phones for pictures. So I can say what we've done in the past is we encourage folks to get disposable cameras if they don't have a camera that's separate from their phone. We also have all of our leaders bringing their cameras, their phones also as cameras. So we really, really encourage folks, leave your phone behind. That's what we encourage. Question about tents. So we do share tents with others. Each trip group is no more than 12 people and no fewer than 8. We have 4-person tents, 3-person tents, 6-person tents, as well as tarps that can sleep the entire group underneath. So we have a variety of different sleeping setups that we can arrange. So yes, we do sleep with others in the tents, as few as 3 people, as many as 12. Yes, the Catamount Trail trip is sleeping in tents. Is that correct, Mimi?
Yeah, so all of the service trek trips will also be camping. Most of the trips, with the exception of Service Pride, will have access to bathrooms. So you'll be camping, but you'll have a little bit added layer of modern comfort in there. But yes, still either a tent or tarp for all of the service trips.
So question about how spicy is the spicy level backpacking trip? Again, we have a variety of different backpacking routes, and we try to match folks' preference for spiciness level for the trips. Spicy, I believe we have it on our website, is upwards of 8 miles a day, hiking up 3,000, 4,000 foot peaks. The spiciest trips are in the Adirondack High Peaks regions. So the longest day of any trip is 9 miles. Every trip averages fewer than that, more like 6 to 7 miles. And the spicier trips are around that same amount, but with more elevation gain and higher peaks to climb. There's a question here about protocol if someone on the trail gets COVID. So there's kind of a two-part response to this. So one is what Mimi stated here. If we have a confirmed case for COVID, exactly what Mimi posted in the chat here, we plan to do the same thing we did last year, which is if someone starts exhibiting symptoms of COVID, so cough, runny nose, something that could be COVID or could also be a cold, we'll bring rapid test kits with us and then test someone, and then 24 hours later test someone again, and then depending on the test results, we know where to go. Either way, if somebody starts exhibiting symptoms that could be COVID, we're sending all trips out with what we're calling an isolation tent, which is just a single person tent that we can keep someone sleeping separately from the group if we suspect that they may have COVID or some other infectious disease that we don't want the rest of the group to catch. Ooh, how buggy are the trips? So there are bugs. The high bug season in the Adirondacks is more like June and July, but there are definitely bugs out there. We contend with black flies as well as mosquitoes as well as ticks. So we encourage folks to bring bug spray. Personally, even in the high heat of summer, I wear hiking pants instead of shorts as both bug protection and sun protection. there are a number of different ways to protect yourself against bugs. One is chemical, another is physical. I personally choose to wear hiking pants and tuck them into my socks. There are products that that are best meant to go on your skin, as well as products that are best meant to go onto your pants, onto clothing. So we definitely encourage you, and it is on the packing list, to get some bug spray, bring it with. So yes, there are bugs. And I will say, how buggy is really a subjective question. If you're coming from, if you grew up in Alaska, you come here and say, where are the bugs? If you grew up in a city, you might say something different. So it's hard for us to say exactly how buggy it is, because it is a subjective. But yes, there are bugs. Trekking poles, they're not on the packing list. If you typically hike with trekking poles, please bring them. They're a great thing to have on the trip. Depending on the spiciness level you recommended, suggested, requested. Yeah, so if you normally trek with trekking poles, feel free to bring them. Not something that you need to go out and buy. If you know that you have trouble with your knees and you're worried about it, trekking poles are a great thing to help with uphills and downhills, but it's not a required item. Mimi, can you field this question about farm and food?
I can indeed. And my short answer is that full itineraries with your camping locations are going to be shared as we get closer to trek. We don't say that to be cagey necessarily. We just have a couple pieces that are still sliding around. So for the service trips in particular, we try to have you camp as close as possible to the community partners that you'll be working with, so that even if you're working with several partners across a given area, you're not spending too much time in the car from day to day. So as close as we can get you to community partners, but some pieces are still in flux. So we'll share that as we get a little bit closer.
All right, there are two questions that were just published that I'd like to respond to. One is about tents. For the backpacking trips, we are using UVM tents. You do not need to bring your own tent. And there was another question about hammocks. We've had folks bring their own hammocks before. If you do a lot of camping and you prefer to sleep in a hammock, that is a-okay. The one thing to know is that all of the trips that are camping at state park campgrounds, so the majority of our base camp trips, all of our base camp trips, all of our service trips, except for the Pride trip, state park campgrounds don't have great trees for hammocking, or rather we can't guarantee that there will be good trees for hammocking. If you're on a backpacking trip, there's a high likelihood that you're going to be at a campsite that has good trees for hammocking. And then a question here about the activities done during a multi-sport base camp. So the multi-sport base camp is in Vermont. There's 1 day of hiking, 1 day in canoes. There's 1 day of rock climbing, and another day of hiking. So there are 2 days of hiking, a day of canoeing, and a day of rock climbing. And then a day at either end of getting there and departure. There's one kind of a half day in there to hang out by the lake, go for a short hike, kind of a choose your own destiny for the trip. But so they're hiking, canoeing, and rock climbing. Okay, so the questions have slowed. There are currently no new questions. If we'll give folks another few seconds if there are more questions that pop up.
Just a note, while we give folks a couple more seconds to, we got 3 more questions, but just a note while Devin is fielding questions, that this session tonight is being recorded. And so if you want to revisit any of these questions at any time, you'll be able to do that on our website. Or if you hear of anyone else that missed tonight's session, they can go ahead and view tonight's session on the website so that they don't miss out on any of this info. Back to you, Devin. More questions.
All right, so the Service Pride trip is heading out towards Camel's Hump to a campground that you have to hike into. So it's a backcountry campsite, but you are base camping. So you won't be packing up all of your stuff every day and moving it to your next camp, but hiking it in once, setting up camp, and returning to camp each night. Another question, am I allowed to bring any over-the-counter medication like Tylenol? Yes, if you regularly take medication, please bring what you regularly take. Excuse me, we do ask that you are upfront with your leaders with what you're bringing. All of our leaders have wilderness medical training, and if we do get into any hairy situations and if anyone needs anything from the med kit, it's really valuable for the leaders to know if you've already taken Tylenol or you already have taken ibuprofen. So please do. If you know that you get blisters, definitely bring your own blister stuff. If you know that I know myself personally, I wake up with headaches a lot, and so I do bring my own Tylenol as well. So yes, if you know that you regularly need to take medication, over-the-counter stuff, please bring it, and please be open with your leaders of what you're bringing, so that we're all on the same page. Sea kayakers, a question about what sea kayak people are sleeping in. Sea kayakers are sleeping in tents and or under tarps. Should we bring money? That's a great question. There are few opportunities to spend money. Those that do exist is maybe a cone of ice cream here or there. So we don't, let's see if there are any trips that we actually recommend or require spending money. So the trips that are staying at base camps, at state park campgrounds, most of the campgrounds have showers that require quarters. I believe there's one or two that does not. So to be safe, if you know that if you're on a base camp trip, so that would be the service trips, excluding the Pride service trip, the multi-sport Vermont trips, and the Adirondack climb and hikes, you should bring quarters for showers if you are planning on showering. There are a handful that don't require quarters for showers, but just to be safe, it'd be a good idea to bring some cash. I see a question, how spicy is the Pride backpacking trip? I believe that the Pride backpacking trip is between mild and medium. If you have a specific concern about that, please reach out and we can confirm more details on the specific route.
I'll also jump in and say that we, give trips these ranking of mild, medium, or spicy, but as Devin said, that can be very subjective. And so if you have questions about, how we define mild compared to your definition of mild, again, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to work through that with you so that you feel comfortable and feel like the trip that you've been assigned is something within your ability level.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that, Mimi. I think what's important to know about coming on trips with Student Life for Trek, we match the trip to the group, not the other way around. So once you're on the trail, your leaders have been trained to work with the whole group to identify what's the right pace, how far should we be going. We try to do our best to match the route to you, and which is why we ask what your preference is. But we're not going to force you to march through dark because that's the itinerary that we put you on. Your leaders are trained to work with you and your trip mates to make sure that the trip is right for you. Yes, VT Multi-Sport Base Camp has bathrooms and showers.
And I can jump into for the question about Catamount Trail. Catamount Trail does include hiking insofar as you have to go to the trail section that you're working on. So we generally estimate 1 to 2 miles of hiking a day. You may be transporting some of the gear that the Catamount Trail Association has provided for that area's restoration work. But it's not, I mean, if we were ranking it on our mild, medium, spicy, we would rank it as a mild trip.
Okay, so for kayaking, is there an amount of time we should be able to kayak for in a day? So again, our leaders are trained to make sure that the trip fits the group. So the first day of the sea kayaking trip is about half of the day is spent kayak instruction. We do spend the majority of the days kayaking. And our leaders are proficient in training folks the skill and the technique to kayak in a way that you can maintain a reasonable pace all day. So we're not sprinting. We're setting a good pace that we can maintain all day. But we do plan our itineraries to be out and active for the day. There's no prerequisites for sea kayaking. If not all of the activities that we do are work smarter, not harder kind of activities. So we provide a lot of upfront instruction and then work to hone the skills so that we can continue to move through our itinerary smoothly and efficiently in a way that doesn't overly tax people. For sea kayaking, you should not bring hiking boots. You do not need hiking boots for sea kayaking. You do want water shoes that you can wear in the boat, as well as shoes for on shore. And we want to make sure that the shoes that you have that are meant to be for the water, not just flip flops, but something that has a way to stay on your foot. So a active adventure sandal with a heel strap is good. Flip flops, not the kind of thing that we want as a water shoe. All right, the questions have slowed again. And we're getting closer to 6. As Mimi said, this has all been recorded. All of the questions and answers have been taken note of and will all be available online once we have the recording from our friends in event services. As Mimi said, if you know folks that weren't able to make it, please direct them to our website where they can find this recording. Otherwise, unless we get another question in the next few seconds, we are going to wrap up our information session. All right, there we are. Thank you all for tuning in, and we are so very excited to welcome you to UVM in just over a month. Holy cow. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.